you're single, you're not married, you don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage. If you're going to do it now. So basically, for 2 years, I hopped couch to couch, literally lived out of a literal walk-in closet, like not figuratively, like had a twin size bed in a walk-in closet and lived with three other roommates just to make do and figure it out.
Welcome to Sunny Setup Podcast. I'm your host, David. Nice to meet you, Mukwenda.
Nice to meet you, David. Great to meet. Funny enough, so my middle name is Mukwenda. I go by Mukwenda. I've always have. Technically, my first name is actually David, so we share the same name.
Really?
Yeah, technically on my license. yeah. So it's David talking to David. Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's great to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you too, man. So, what do you do, and when did you start doing it?
Well, again, my name is Mukwenda. I have a company called Spark. I started it when I was 20, about to turn 21, and I primarily focus on basically helping leaders leverage their influence and get attention specifically through video and helping to kind of elevate their voice. I do a lot of promotional videos for companies and brands for leaders. I do I call them brand story videos, commercials. We actually been getting into producing video podcasts for people, as well as video courses for companies. And I have a digital marketing background. I did a lot of that for a lot of years with some great partners, some of which you've had on your show, but kind of more. And I've done a good bit of consulting as well, but kind of more transition specifically, just kind of focus on video, which has always been my bread and butter. I love storytelling and helping brands kind of find their story and kind of have an edge in their market. And so that's kind of what I've devoted a lot of my time to. And it's kind of a little snapshot of what I do.
Okay. How did you get into business and media? Like, what led you down that path?
I'd always had a business knack in me, since I was young, but I never started a company. I grew up, my dad still is in, the ministry. He was a pastor. So I grew up doing missions and doing all these different things. And so honestly, I thought that was just going to be my life. And in the missions process, if anyone's gone on a mission trip, you know that part of what you kind of have to do is your job. You have to persuade people to not just give, but to care about the cause that you are going to help serve. And so with that comes storytelling, like, innately. So I was always drawn to that and how the power of persuasion can be used for good, for good things, not like, to make you do something that's, wouldn't be good for your body or wouldn't be good for the world. And so that always fascinated me. And after high school, I moved from Pennsylvania, where I'm from, to Michigan, and joined a missions and kind of humanitarian organization that did a lot of international work, work in Nepal, work in a bunch of different countries. And so I learned a lot from that, how they did advertising, how they did storytelling. And I was just intrigued. And so it kind of woke up a desire in me. I didn't know it was there for advertising, for storytelling. And so I started to, as a volunteer, work, learn, and just kind of hustle and just learn that craft. Picked up photography, picked up video, learned how to do social media marketing a bit. Was doing it for free a lot. And then I built up enough of a portfolio of freelance work I was doing. And there was a family from the church I was going to. They own a very well-known advertising agency in Rochester, Michigan called Daniel Bryan Advertising. And we went to church together, became very close friends. And they've done work for Chick-fil-A, for Whole Foods, Disney, very huge brands, big hospital. Henry Ford Health System was their client for a long time. Hungry Howie's, if you're familiar, in the Midwest area. And so I was not only intrigued by what they did, I was intrigued by how they did it, their values. They had a statement, a mission statement that will never lie never lie for a client. That we serve better brands for a better human condition. There's just those things. I'm like, man, they're serious about it. And so after I did this internship with this humanitarian organization for 2 years, I asked them, I was like, hey, I've been freelancing. Can I intern with you guys? And so, I applied, I interviewed, and they gave me a shot, which was a big deal because I didn't even have my bachelor's degree. And they gave me a shot. Worked there for a year at that agency, and I loved it. Went from intern to on contract, and was negotiating my salary. And literally, and I truly believe that, some people call it the universe, I call it God. Um, he kind of uses situations to kind of push you into it, because I was so content being at the agency. It was like you're working with some of the most creative people, problem solving. You're working on challenges all the time and figuring out creative solutions for it. I'm like, man, there's nothing better. And you're working with just incredible people. I loved my coworkers, loved everybody I worked with, and I got to float around different departments: the accounts team, the creative team, the design team, the video team, and the editors, and finance, and just kind of I got a good scope, and so they lost a lot of clients, and I learned very quickly in advertising how you can lose clients, very quick. Like my first day as an intern, they lost Flagstar Bank as a client, which was a huge client for them, and so it was one of those realizations. Okay, this is an industry that can go up and down. It's great when it's great, and then when it's not, it's not. So they lost a bunch of work, and I found myself in an office and with my mentor who owns the agency and HR. And basically they were like, hey, yeah, you know, we, we tried our best. Like he was crying. He's like, we tried our best to save everybody, but we have to let you go in your department. And he was crying and he was like, hey, listen, but I really feel like you're supposed to do your own thing. You should go out and start your own business. And it wasn't even on my radar at the time. Even though I always had that knack in me. And basically I had a lot of mentors in my life who were like, listen, I was 20 at the time. They're like, you're single, you're not married, you don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage. If you're going to do it now. So basically for 2 years, I hopped couch to couch, literally lived out of a literal walk-in closet, like not figuratively, like had a twin size bed in a walk-in closet and lived with three other roommates just to make do and figure it out. And that was my start. And I basically just started with some of the freelance relationships I had, and I grew them. And I worked with anything from barbershops to eyelash extension salons, construction company, anybody that would hire me. And I was kind of a jack of all trades. I was doing social media. I was doing photography, video. I mean, I was taking pictures of babies, like, whatever, like I could get my hands on, But then over time, I started to find my love for helping founders. Because I realized when you're working with a brand, especially one that's more of a small business or medium size, you're really helping a founder's dream come a reality and it being expressed visually. And I because I'm a entrepreneur myself, there's that immediate connection with someone had a dream, someone had and it was fascinating. And I worked with so many different industries, like literally restaurants to construction to um virtual reality arcades to roofing, pest control, and every one of them are different industries. But it was like an MBA program for me. I was learning how different businesses thought, the processes, and it was fascinating for me. But there's always a similar pattern of connection to a founder who has a dream, has a passion, and they want to, whether it's they want to make a difference or whether they want to support their family and the families of their staff or whatever it is. And so it just was I found that as my passion, and so I kind of lean more into that. Um, develop some strategic partners in paid advertising and digital digital marketing that can kind of push the content forward, because I was really content heavy, and really focus on trying to get results for these clients that we were working with, because they're, mostly smaller businesses. They didn't have the big budgets like in the agency world that I came from. So every dollar mattered. And so, we tried a lot of things out, experimented, and helped a lot of, we've helped a lot of businesses over the years, to scale, to be able to hire more people. There was one scenario where we helped a good friend of mine, and he had a car dealership. He still does. And, he had a partner that stole from him like several $100,000. And he reached out. He's like, I need some type of push just to kind of get the ball rolling again. And we took it very seriously, me and my partner, and we're like, let's go above and beyond. So like I put everything I did into the creative, and he did an amazing job in the back end with the paid ads. And like, I mean, we're able to see him get in 6 months a 40% increase in sales, and
Wow.
turned it around. He was able to hire 10 plus people, and now they're in 2 states, like, and so seeing stories like that, that's what kind of really made it worth it to me. And again, the founder, like, helping them go from here to there, that's kind of become my mission. Now, obviously, it's changed a lot over the years. We don't do as much as social media management anymore. There's other things, and again, I'm more tailored now to video, but that's kind of been the goal. And so I've been running the company for 6 years now. I just turned 27, and it's grown every year, which has been a blessing. And then I've grown with it every year, because you grow as much as the leader grows, right? In many instances. So, but yeah, it's been an amazing process. I've learned this so much, and yeah, it's been pretty cool.
That's interesting. Quite a story you have.
Yeah, it is.
So you mentioned like learning through the internship that you started off with and through the work. Did you where did you learn the majority of your skills from?
Uh, to be honest with you, YouTube. I like genuinely.
Yes, YouTube
Yeah,
University.
YouTube University works every time. And I honestly, I tell people at this point, if they're interested in video photography, nothing wrong with film school. I know plenty of friends that went, and it is worth it. But for the majority of people, if you're a self starter, like, I shadowed people, like I knew people who were in the industries, and I'm like, hey, can I go on a shoot with you? Like, can you tell me how you did this? I take people out for coffee, lots of coffees. I take people out just to learn and soak it up. And then I always kept the bar high, in a sense that, you know, I had inspirations of, like, especially, whether it's Vimeo or different folks out there within the filmmaking sense. I always saw like what they were doing. I'm like, or different agencies that would do incredible campaigns. I'm like, I want to try to model that, not steal it, but like, every great artist steals, in a sense. Like, you model yourself of like, I want to make something like this. I always kept raising the bar. Like, I never stayed at one place, and I think part of it is just I maybe I can't take credit for. Maybe that was built in my DNA from my parents, but I think it's a value system of like, hey, whatever you do it to your best of your ability. Do it with excellence. Um, I made a point that a value system, and what I did was, I'm going to treat every client like they're my dream client, no matter what. So like from the beginning, and that helped me get more business, because I didn't treat a $500 deal like it was a $500 deal. I treated it like it was a $5,000 deal. Because I wanted to give it that much attention, because I know that's going to lead to the next job. Like in my line of work, my advertising is my work. So if I'm not giving 110% in every project, it's not going to lead to the next deal. And not just the work that I do, but how I treat the client and how they feel valued, and how they feel, things were communicated well, all those different things, right? So yeah, I learned through YouTube, learned through mentors, taking people out to coffee, lunches. Of course, I learned through books, but a lot of it, I also learned just by trying. Like, all right, I've always wanted to do this. Like, one of the things I encourage people to, specifically within the industry I'm in, to do this. They call it spec work, but essentially, if you have, if you're charging a certain amount and you've been wanting to get to here, from here to here, maybe it's another up level of production quality or something, and maybe it's another piece of gear, or maybe it's hiring a certain contracted position out to do a certain thing like sound designing or animation or whatever. I would intentionally in certain projects when I knew, okay, if I just like go like here, this is going to take it to a whole nother level. I would just break even on that project or go into red intentionally, knowing that I want to show that in my portfolio. And when people say, "Oh, how much was that video?" That client might have paid 500. It's like, "Oh yeah, that's $1,000. It's worth it." It's like because I put that effort in there and just doing new things. So, yeah, YouTube University, man, that's been it for me.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured, but just wanted to get your story. So like when through you said 6 years that you've been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what would you say like your biggest struggles and successes have been?
Oh man, I mean, the first struggle. I mean, the greatest motivation was being broke, and needing to pay rent. Like that. Nothing will motivate you more. Like um, having to figure it out. Like I have loving parents. There was only a handful of times I had to reach out to them for help. But to be honest with you, again, I'm not. I lived in Michigan for 8 years. I live in Texas now, but and again, I'm from Pennsylvania. I could have moved back to Pennsylvania. There's multiple times that I was this close, but and again, this is not true for everybody, but for me, my hometown was like comfort. Like I knew if I go back, I'd die. I'd be cared for, I'd be loved, but like that drive, that ambition, it would die. Because you just kind of play it easy if you have a safety net of sorts. You have a support system, and they supported me, but kind of having your back against the wall and just kind of it was the struggles of that of finances. It was the struggles of I started with nothing. Literally, I only had my camera and a laptop. That kind of was good, and you don't know what you don't know, and so you're going into the unknown, and you're just trying, and you know, I mean, every day, just like putting like 16 hours of work in or plus, just to try to, I knocked on doors, I did, and then over time, you learn and you adapt and you evolve, and but I think honestly, the struggles have been that, and it's funny enough, even at year 6, um, and I have a lot of friends that are in similar industries. It's funny how we've grown in similar stages together, even though they're not exactly the same. But in year 6, the struggles that I have are not the same as year 1. It might not necessarily be like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to pay rent, and I feel like it always starts that way. Like you do it to like, all right, pay the bills, right? And then you get it growing, and you get it to like, okay, you're finding who you are. It starts to get a little bit more steady. Then it gets to a point it's like, okay, like now we're like starting to get profitable, and there's a critical point, and I'm at this point where it's like, okay, in order to scale, I gotta double down on what's working. I gotta cut out what's not working, and I can either just coast at this level, or if I want to continue to grow, I'm going to need to add more people. I'm going to need to. So like my expenses are up, but the revenue is up. And so like, so learning that world now of like, okay, how do I make this where it's beyond just me? Where if Mukwenda wasn't involved in this project, it could still get done. If Mukwenda didn't have his hands on it, can still, and so every year it's gotten better. Where it's like, okay, I'm starting to slowly take my hands off this, slowly take my hands off this. But it's been a lot of that, and also figuring out, I had almost like a wake up call, like, okay, I'm 4 years from year 10. What kind of business do I want to build? When I'm in my 30s, and so it's been a lot of self reflection and like, okay, am I building what I want? If I'm not, how do I pivot that and make adjustments? And so I've done a lot of pivoting this year because of that, because of those self reflections and getting real with myself as far as what I want. So, anyways, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
Yeah.
the struggles that were in the beginning, and then now there. It's always a different struggle, I've learned, but it's just all part of the growth process.
Yeah, I think struggles, especially over a long period of time, you have to kind of like work through them in your head, and
Mm-hmm.
it's you can't just provide a one sentence answer. It's
Right.
a culmination of a lot of things. So that
Yeah.
I think any answer is a good answer for that one.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How do you find customers and like new customers in today's day and age?
To, Funny enough, to be honest with you, and this is speaking from someone that does social media. Like, I'm on social. I have a team that does it for me. That helps me. Um, being out there helps tremendously because it jogs in people's mind. You're stewarding leads you don't even know are leads, right? At least in my service industry of work, it's like you're just digging wells. You're just digging. You're digging. You don't know when you're gonna hit it, and but like if you stop digging, you're not gonna hit it, right? So I've done PR releases. I've done guest podcast stuff. I've done my own social stuff, putting out videos. Anytime I have a new project, put it out there. Anytime a new case study, put it out there, right? Go to the networking events, all this different stuff. All for that, which all those things are good, and I think all of them culminate in getting a customer base. But honestly, like what's never failed is word of mouth. It's like that, the old school way of shaking someone's hand in person and building a relationship and actually caring about them and what their future goals are and building rapport. I mean, my best clients have come from word of mouth. I have a client now that came from one of my biggest clients, and they were like, "Man, who did your work? This guy did it, and you should work for him." And I was bidding against multiple different agencies and production companies they were looking at, and they asked their friend, "Hey, who should we go with? Go with my guy." Like that is better than any type of marketing I could have ever done. You know what I mean? And so I think sometimes, at least for me, I've seen we can underestimate that because it's like, oh, it's hard to scale. It's like, well, not necessarily. Like, um, you're just constantly. Uh, there's a concept in scripture, seed time and harvest, which is really a more Jewish proverb or philosophy. But basically, it's just like you sow seed, you sow seed. You don't know when the harvest is going to come. That's not your job. Your job is just to sow seed, and then in time, you'll get a harvest. And um, having relationships that you can just foster, because sometimes I think we can focus on a lot of the technical stuff or a lot of the this and that, and just we're in the people business, and so you have to treat people well. Um, at the end of the day, there are thousands upon thousands of different people who do what I do. Someone's gonna use me, not yes, partly because my work maybe is better, or they really like my work, or they like my results, but they're gonna go with me because they trust me. It's like the same like a financial advisor. I mean, anybody can run your portfolio, right? And then you can have different opinions on what stock do they use or what's their investment risk tolerance or what their philosophy on investing is. But at the end of the day, it's like, do you trust the guy? Do you like the guy? Like that's who you're gonna go with, and was he recommended to you by somebody? It's like, yeah, I used him. He was great. It's not just what was on the website and what you hear, and no, he's actually good. Like that's who you're gonna go with, and so, I've just found that still works. So, I just try to foster every relationship I can, and that leads to the next, and it leads to the next.
That was a good answer. It's
I felt like
like,
it wasn't anything like brilliant, but
but I mean, with the episode with Andrew Futrell, he said the same thing. He said word of mouth, it really just kind of trumps anything because, like you said, you can see some great work and everything, but if you have somebody that says, "Go with Mukwenda, he has the best work and the best customer service that I've ever dealt with,"
right,
how do you top that? You can't.
right, right. So in a sense, you could say your marketing is the current client you have. Like it's we had this at the agency I worked at. We had this concept they called find gold and refine gold. That sometimes we think finding gold is in getting new clients, but sometimes it's actually in the client you already have. You're just not refining it. It's like, okay, like
Hmm.
what problems, what solutions to the problems they don't even know they have can I give them? What are things that have been bugging them that I can continue to be a resource? I mean, I've taken clients from like they were only doing like this much with me to like I start opening the gate. It's like, oh wow, we're doing. I just became a problem solver in their world, and they knew they can come to Mukwenda if they have a need. I do a lot of work with agencies too, not just like individual brands or companies. And I'm always looking, how can I solve a problem? Even if I'm not the one to do it, if I know somebody, I'm a valuable source to them. And so, yeah, I think your marketing is the current client you have that maybe you're neglecting because you're trying to get the new guy. And it's like, well, if you really put a lot of attention and effort into this guy, he's probably going to lead you to that because there's going to come a time where you feel the open door and you're like, hey, do you have anyone you could, we're looking to expand and grow, especially if you're in the Midwest. People like to recommend people. Like that's honestly, I credit that to how I grew. If I was in LA, it would have been probably definitely different because it's a dog eat dog world out there. I have a lot of friends out there in the film industry, and they talk about how tough it is. People like I've literally have had people who are quote unquote competitors refer me to projects. Like, yeah, this doesn't fit within our vertical, but Mukwenda is great for that, and I've done the same. I've passed on work all the time. And so, you know, we're in a great area of that. So again, if you have a great product, like if you focus on the quality being the best it can, top notch, you're always improving. You're always finding new solutions to problems they don't even know they have, and you treat them well, like genuinely treat them well. Like when you're in the wrong, you say that you're in the wrong. You say sorry. You make it right. You don't blame them. You try to be there for them and be their greatest partner. Like that will lead to other work.
Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
Just be nice to people, and they'll be nice to you back.
it's kind of simple, but it's true. It works. I wish it was more complex, but it's usually the stuff that we complicate that makes it complicated. It's like the simple things is
Mm-hmm.
actually the things that work.
Yep. So, if you were to give advice to somebody that wants to follow your path, what would you say?
Mm, that's a good question. What would I tell somebody trying to go down my path? Um, I'd say don't overthink it. Because and I tell people all the time, like I'm always a proponent, like have a strategy, have a game plan before you go into anything, which is true. But a lot of times I know people who are in love with strategy. They're in love with planning. Um, I literally had a client one time that I was consulting with. Um, he had a 4-year startup that had never launched. I don't even know if it's launched to this day. I don't know if he's made $1. 4 years, he put several $100,000 into this technology company that never launched. And my challenge to him, which I don't know if he followed, was like, you just need to make $1. You need to make one transaction and for one person to like your product. Or maybe not even, but they gave you feedback. That will be more worth way more than any type of like, and I believe in focus groups. But the greatest focus group is someone that buys your product and tells you if they liked it or not. Like sometimes we can like so overthink it when in reality, like it's tough for me again, like, cause I have a lot of people who ask me, hey, how do I start my business? It's tough for me to like give them advice because again, I started from a different place. I was single. I didn't have kids, right? Like my back wasn't against the wall. But I also had the ability to sleep couch to couch, and my expenses were really low and, we weren't in inflation like we were right now, so like, there was a lot of things that were different in my journey, but nevertheless, I think like sometimes it's just like, don't overthink it. Just get to the quickest sale that you can and just figure it out from there. Like, and I'm a proponent of having a website and having all your stuff together. And there's times where, hey, if you're doing a big sale, you need to have all that stuff. But sometimes it's like, hey, you might not even need that stuff. You might not even need a business card in the beginning, like, because sometimes I think without knowing, we can just be stalling because we're scared, rather than just like, hey, like just start and just learn as you go. Like get that because like the hardest thing, and I tell people this all the time, the hardest thing to start is momentum, but it's also the hardest thing to stop once it's started, right? And like if you're in the zone with you know with a business, like I love to follow that energy. I'm a huge believer in that. When that energy is stalled, like that's why it matters. I mean, I don't know if you're a Jim Collins guy and you've read any of his books like Good to Great. He talks about a lot of times it's better to have the right people on the bus and you don't know where you're going than have the wrong people on the bus and you do know where you're going. Because the wrong people on the bus will keep you from where you want to go. Like they'll just be stumbling blocks. They're like, oh, like overthinking and you got to have 10 meetings for everything instead of just like, hey, let's just go. We're going to figure it out. It's going to be messy. Like, and yes, like, am I all for you? Like, yeah, get your legal system set up for some businesses you have to start. I didn't get my LLC started for like a year, or close to it. Like I just started, like literally the reason why I even got official in a business bank account because my bank literally told me they're like, hey, you have too much money in here, and we're gonna freeze your account if you don't turn this to business bank. And so I was like, okay, I guess that's my next step. Like again, if I was doing it now, would I do that? No. But again, like part of it, you just got to go. You just got to try, especially in those beginning years. The government's not really looking at you like that, unless you're making like $1 million or something like they're not really like looking over your shoulder like that. You just got to start, and I think you're going to constantly adapt. And yeah, I think as long as you have a clear mission, and a clear focus, I think that's going to help. But again, sometimes you just got to go.
That's an excellent answer, and that's how I started with doing this. I didn't know anything, so I just
Right.
said I'm just gonna film my first one and just figure it out. So
Yeah. Because you could have been still planning, a year from now, and not have gotten, you know, because there's always going to be problems that come up, right? But it's like, that momentum just keeps the ball going. It kind of puts the pressure on that you kind of need to keep it going. So, yeah, kudos to you, man.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, man. This has been great. I know the time's flown by really fast, but
I know.
yeah, no, but thank you. I hopefully somebody gets some value out of this, and it's really an honor that you want to have me on. And shout out to Andrew for putting us together.
Yep.
And but yeah, appreciate it from one David to another.
Yep. Until next time.
Yes, sir. See ya.